All right, I am back, and listen, thank you guys all so much for tuning into another one of my podcasts. And I'm going to get into a little bit more detail in regards to why I kind of changed my intro up just a little bit. You'll understand in a minute. But what I want to talk about just really briefly was this summer. I usually do my podcast over the summer, but I decided to actually take a break. For those of you who follow me, and for the ones that don't, I just recently purchased a cottage. And let me tell you, I had a blast up there with my friends, with my family. We did so much up there. It was a lot of fun, and it actually allowed me to reconnect, like seriously reconnect with friends and family. I got to put my phone in my bedroom and not look at it for hours, and jump on the boat and just really enjoy the weather and good company. Now, jumping into this call here, I actually had the opportunity to discuss, I would say, an important topic with a really good friend of mine, Joy Ragona. And before I actually jump into it, even though I know I said I was gonna, but before I do, there's something else that I want to kind of touch on, because the way that I did change up my intro is because, and it's something I'm really excited about. It's been in the making for a little while now, but I'm going to be actually going to iTunes. So I'm excited about that. I got a new cover that we're working on, and I don't know if I want to tell you guys a title yet. Maybe I will. Nah, I think I'll wait. I'm going to wait a little bit longer. But it did take me a little while to kind of figure out the title that I wanted to go with. I think I'm happy with it. I hope you guys will be happy with it as well too. It's going to allow me to not just talk about health and wealth, but it's going to allow me to talk about other things that I'm interested in, and maybe kind of give you guys some different stuff that you might be interested in as well too, because I'm just a very inquisitive type of person. Obviously I'd like to learn about wealth and health and all that good stuff. I think is really important, but there's a lot of other things that I'm really interested in as well too. So I want this particular podcast to give me the platform that's going to bring you guys that type of information. Now let's get into the call that I did with Joy Ragona. And as you guys know, I love the mindset stuff. And that's what we talked heavily about this month. We did a real deep dive into the world of what it takes to have that right mindset. And without getting into too much detail, I mean, man, we covered a lot of stuff. Joey's really big on, should you sacrifice or not? And I can tell you his stance on that might actually might shock you a bit. We talked about, should you hire a coach or a mentor, somebody to hold you accountable, and how important is that? What are the two stages of learning, which is really interesting. And then also, why is failure such an important part of learning and success? And we talked obviously about a lot of other things as well too. So with that, sit back, relax. I hope you guys enjoy this month's podcast, and I will talk to you guys next month. Take care. All right. So on today's call, I've got my good friend, Joy Ragona. Are you there?
I'm here, buddy.
Beautiful. So listen, we haven't done this in a while, so I'm actually pretty excited about this one. I know the first one we did was about joint ventures, yep. But yeah, no. Today we're going to talk about, which is one of the things I talk about a lot, and I know you do all the time, which is mindset.
Yeah.
Right. So listen, why don't we just jump right into it? I know you got a pretty busy schedule, and why don't you just let everybody know who Joy Ragona is, and what you do, and maybe you can kind of do that in like 30, 40 seconds.
Yeah, cool. Okay. I'm really a coach consultant type of thing. And I'm more of I help real estate investors really achieve their personal freedom. And I know that sounds like everybody else out there, but what I do is I help them achieve that freedom without them sacrificing their lives and sitting in seminar rooms, learning the stuff they'll never actually use. And it's really about disrupting their flow of what goals really are in their lives. And what I mean by disrupting, it's really, challenging them to discover what is true for them so they can get to the freedom. Because a lot of us just, we fill our lives with other things. And we'll probably talk about this throughout this podcast. getting away from what true freedom means to us. So I'm really that guy, that person who challenges clients to get to the personal freedom that they're really looking for.
Right. And so this is obviously important to you, or else you wouldn't be doing it. So why? Why did you decide to go down this particular, road, and I guess we'll call it not even road, but journey, right? Because this is a journey. So why this particular journey? Why is it important to you?
I think that the biggest thing is that I see people sacrificing their lives. That's a big one for me. I see a lot of people talking about hustle and grind and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that it's not important to work hard, work extra hours here and there, but it's when you give up your life doing those things, give up for the hustle, give up for the grind. I'm totally against all that. I'm totally against the grind. I stand against the hustle. But that doesn't mean we don't work hard. We need to work strategically hard, and we're giving up. I see people giving up, and I was one of them. I'm putting my hand up here first, right? People giving up the actual freedom that they're after, and thinking that with the old cliche that if I work hard for 3 or 4 years, I'll get what everybody else can't get for the rest of their lives. Well, it's all BS. And I see people in it decades of their lives, and I was doing that for 40 years of my own life, and saw the trend, and then saw my dad do it, and then he died at 60 years old and didn't have a life. And so it really opened my eyes going, I seen how hard my dad worked, that I was down the same road, and I see people doing it now, and I'm trying to shortcut the system for them and not get them to that point where they are 40, 50, 60 years old regretting what they've given up.
So to summarize, you're not against hard work, you're against sacrifice. Is
Right.
that correct?
Right.
Right. Okay. And then that's what you're not big on, where you're seeing people sacrificing, giving up things that are so important, just to get what they're after, and losing, I guess, sight of what's really important.
Right. I mean, all my clients have come in with the same attitudes because they've been duped by the industry or people on stage telling them how hard they've worked and all this other kind of stuff. And again, I'm one of the hardest workers out there. My clients are the hardest workers out there, but we do it strategically. This past weekend, when I'm talking to new clients, they always freak out when I say, listen, my phone or the access to me shuts off Thursday at 4:00 in the afternoon until Monday morning at 10 a.m. And they're like, holy crap. Like, I'm going to go. I said, yeah, well, I have a 3-day weekend every single week. Now, that doesn't mean I never work on Saturdays and Sundays. I would be lying if I told you that. But more than likely, that's the way my life is, right? So it's centered around what I want freedom to be for me personally. And then I build my business around that. And people don't understand that when they get into any business, whether it's real estate or whatever it is, right? They just go in and say, well, just give me everything and let me work hard and grind and sacrifice and all this kind of stuff. I love, Gary Vaynerchuk, but I totally disagree with him being the grinder 24 hours a day. Everything else that he says, I love it, but that was the one thing I stand against. And there's other people in the real estate industry that will talk about grind and hustle and all this other kind of stuff. Grant Cardone is another guy, right? All these dudes. And hey, you can argue that they're really successful and all this kind of stuff, but I would take a look at their back end of their life and what's going on there too. I just don't live my life based on sacrifice anymore because I've seen it all the way through my life. Ever since I grew up, it was always about sacrifice. I saw my parents sacrifice. I saw the results of it, and I see other results of it happening in the world today. And I just want to be that person that stops it and help people do it strategically and smart, so they don't give up their daughter's basketball game or, that kind of stuff, man. That's really important. If you're sitting at your daughter's basketball game or your son's hockey game and something, and you're on your freaking phone, catching up on emails, you're not there. You're physically there, but you're sacrificing the time that you miss when they're looking up at you going, did you see me skate, Dad? Did you see me skate? Right. And you happen to be looking at your phone at that time.
Yeah, you know what, Joe? I can't agree with you more on that. And I don't know if everybody else, tuned in and listening right now to this podcast know about the relationship that I have with you. But obviously, I myself and Darlene came to you because we were looking for that help and that guidance, because we were those grinders. We were up until 2, 3 in the morning, and you remember me telling you that. It was just
right.
We were just completely overloaded. But and yet it was like, this is what success looks like. This is what it feels like. And
right.
And now that we've you've helped us with that, what a huge difference. Like
Thank you.
I can't tell you the last time I had to work until, midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
so it's not necessary. You just have to focus it. And I think this is a good segue into the next question. That is, how do you specifically help, people achieve their personal freedom or the productivity that they're looking for?
Okay, well, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different strategies and methods, but the overall thing is kind of the journey that I take them on. And realistically, it's about breaking them down. It's about taking all of your bad habits and looking at them and throwing them on the wall and making you look at them and say, is this how you want to live the rest of your life? Look back. I always challenge people and say, how was the last 3 years of your life? Has it been getting busier for you? And the answer is always yes. It's been getting busier. There's more work to get done, right? And then I say to them, okay, well, do you think that in the next 3 years it's going to get easier or harder? Is there going to be more information or less information? And the ultimate answer is always there's going to be more, right? So they fool themselves, and my job is to break them down. And this is the reason why it's the hardest part of my job, because people come to me for results. They come to me to make more money, to get more freedom, whatever it looks like, the positive stuff. And I always start them out with, challenging them and saying, listen, dude, this is going to be a really difficult, painful, uncomfortable journey. Am I right, Gary? You're part of this. So I'm not saying anything that's not true.
No, very right. And I know that and I think you hit on a really key point, is that what you do is you break it down. And you break it down, and I remember sitting in those rooms with you, and all of a sudden there'd just be like this awkward silence of like, oh my God, like, yeah, you're right. And it's a hard thing sometimes, because you think that you're right, but when you don't know, you don't know. So you're good at breaking it down.
Yeah, and that's the hardest part of my job, honestly, because I had to step into understanding what my best, I guess my superpowers, what I do really, really well, and telling people stuff that they don't want to hear is probably the hardest thing we can do. And it's not because I'm always right, but 90% of the time I'm pretty bang on what I say to people, because it's really about challenging them on what's true for them. And there's only two outcomes that come from what I do. It's that you either stand up and defend exactly what I'm challenging you on to a degree that you're willing to fight to the death, and that is proving one thing, that you truly believe and feel that is the right thing, and that's a win. The other part is, well, shit, maybe Joey is right about this, and maybe I should look at this at a perspective from where he's coming from, and at least invite it into my life. Not that he's right, but let me just look at it from that perspective, right? That's it. Those are the two outcomes.
Right.
But if you don't get it, you choose one of those, and you sit on the fence all your life, you're going to have a mediocre life. You're going to be in what I call the cul-de-sac of life. It's like you get into the cul-de-sac, but you go around and around and around, even though you can see where the exit is, where the main street is. You can see it, but you ain't taking any of those paths to see if it'll get you there. Right. You're just going around and around.
So what is your superpower then?
It's really, the superpower is kind of like what I just touched on, which is seeing the ability, seeing through people and the stuff that they're using as excuses and calling them out, having the tough skin to allow people to get angry at me, to call me every name in the book and all that kind of stuff, break down, and still be that coach and that guide, that support, that system, the hand holding that they need. I'm not a pom-pom guy, right? I'm like, dude, here, this is how I see it, right? Let's look at this. So my superpower is solving people's problems by bringing them to the surface and not being afraid to say it. I've had a lot of couples, you guys are one of them, who've come into my masterminds or coaching, and that I treat you both differently. Even though you're married and you're in that group, when I'm talking to you, Gary, I'm talking to you. When I'm talking to Darlene, I'm talking to Darlene as if Gary was not in the room. Correct?
Correct.
So when I'm in that situation, that's very difficult, but it doesn't matter, because if Darlene is on the hot seat, then let's say that you guys are having a problem, a marriage problem or something going on, I would still say it as if you were not in the room. So I might say stuff where, she would want to say something to Gary, but has never said it, or has never brought it to the surface. And those are uncomfortable situations. But I can tell you that not all the time, but a good 90% of the time, people walk out of that room, including couples, who have now a new light of communication, that they can walk out and go to a dinner and say, let's talk about what Joey brought to the surface, because I never really said that out loud before.
Right.
Right.
Now, and I guess now how this is probably got to be maybe a little bit difficult, or maybe it's not for you, but who are the people that you can help? Like, in other words, are there specific identifiers, a mindset that they need to have? How do you identify that?
Yeah, I think that the easiest answer to that, there's a whole bunch of people. I can run down a couple of things, but one of the biggest things is to have an entrepreneurial mind, someone without rules or boundaries, because you need to be open to suggestion. You need to be open to pivoting. You need to be able to look at perspectives and not always thinking that you're right. And this is the hardest part about it, because we always think we're right, and we hate being told that we're wrong. And it's not that you are wrong. It's just a different perspective from a coaching point of view, right? So, in terms of other people that are distracted, people who postpone and procrastinate, people who they have trouble finishing things, they got multiple projects on the go, people who want people with a tough skin, someone with a tough skin in their corner, which is me, because a lot of times they don't have that. They don't have that person that they could bounce off of. They don't have that person who they could vent off of, like call me up and just tell me what the hell's going on in their life and be really upset about it and blame things. I mean, I could take it all. I mean, there's nothing you can say to me that's going to upset me. You can call me every name in the book. It doesn't matter to me, because I know where you are in the process. And sometimes you need that vent. So it's those type of people that have an open mind, that are willing to, that's the kind of sacrifice I'm okay with, Gary, right? If you can sacrifice that, the journey of breaking down, of being vulnerable, of having the moment in the mirror when you look at yourself and say, you know what? This is the truth. This is the reason I don't have what I don't have. When you look at yourself in the mirror and can admit the truth and take away all of the other stuff that we blame, right? If you're okay with that, those are the people I can help.
Yeah, and I'm sure you must see it all the time, but that's got to be the hardest part, I guess, of when you're having that conversation with that person is, will they actually be open-minded to what it is that I'm trying to share with them or teach them?
Right.
And what does that look like? Like, what's that percentage? Is there a percentage of that success rate, Joey, that actually people then come into we'll say your realm and where you are able to help them? Does that fall into that 80-20 rule as well?
Yeah, definitely it does, because we were just talking about this on the mastermind we just had a couple of weeks ago, whatever, right? And it came up, I don't know how it came up, but we were talking about percentages and people coming through my coaching and when they come in, when they drop off, how long they stay and all this stuff. And I didn't have the actual data, which I think I shouldn't have the data. But when I looked at it, I said, you know what? Out of all these years I've been doing this, I can tell you that 80% of the people will drop off at the 3-month mark. Every time they'll drop off and say it's not for me, or whatever it looks like, whatever excuse they give. Okay. And then the 20% will last for 18 months as an average. And look at you guys, it was 2 years, correct?
Right. It was. Yeah.
So that's the average. Now there's people who've lasted now like 4 years, right? But it's the average is 18 months or 3 months, but it's 80% of the people who come in, no matter what I tell them, and no matter what they say at the first mark of, yes, I'm ready for this. Because, I grow I get more and more in depth in what's going to happen to them at the first conversations to warn them, because I know that this stat, but it doesn't matter. It still happens. I've got a client right now, brand new clients, and we're in almost now 3 months coming up. And I can tell you that last week was one of the hardest weeks we had. And there was major, major breakdowns. And I don't know how many times they probably got off that phone calling me every name in the book. And I knew it. I said, well, you know what? This is going to be the ones that are going to drop. In a month from now, they're going to be gone. Now, I don't know because I'm recording this right now, but it doesn't look that way because 2 days later we had another call and they completely changed their mindset. Like I'm talking about like majorly upset on a call 2 days earlier. You know, the wife calling from work to her husband saying, I don't know where my purpose is and all this other kind of stuff, like majorly breakdown. I felt like rotten, like really, really bad. But that was my job. My job is to break down people and build them back up. I need to see all the pieces of people. And I know this kind of sounds like it's a really bad thing to do, but it really isn't. It's like, look, like we need to understand what's been going on in your life. And most people don't want to do that. They don't want to do the inner reflection stuff.
Yeah, Joey, it is a hard path, though, especially when me and Darlene came to you again, right? It is tough because when you start breaking it down and when you start getting, you really start to expose what you're doing wrong and how you feel that it's the right path. Me and Darlene had a tough time, and
Yep.
even after those calls, we would actually have conversations to ourselves, and we weren't even seeing eye to eye on some of the things, and there was times where we're like, you know what, forget it, let's just drop this thing. It's not going in the right direction. But if people that are listening, if they can understand exactly what you're saying and what I'm saying as well too, that Joey, you did help us. So it really is like you just need, and not everybody always clicks with the coach that
Right.
they're with, right? And I think you can attest to that as well too, Joey. But when you do click, you know it.
Yeah, and those are the things where anybody who's doing any type of business, it's stepping into what you believe is best, okay? And I believe the way that I do things is the best for the client, right? So, but if I didn't, then I wouldn't get the results that I get for clients if I backed away from what I believe. Now, like you said, Gary, 100% of people are not going to agree. 80% of the people are not going to like my vibe or like what I do, or I'm too aggressive or whatever it looks like to them. Like whatever. I'm cool with that because it's the 20% like yourselves who finally break through and have really accomplished something above and beyond making a couple of extra $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
And
Very
those
true.
are the things, bro, that when I die, I'm going to remember. Those are the people that I said, if I didn't enter their lives, maybe perhaps they wouldn't have this other little thing. And that's my little selfish thing, right? I don't walk around as a narcissist and say, hey, it's all me. But at the same time, I know that there was an impact that I had on your lives.
Yeah, and that's your legacy, right? That's something that you're gonna, you'll leave behind. The changes
Right.
that you made in, people's lives, and I think that's important.
Yeah.
As being here on Earth, that's an important piece of life. I wanted to switch gears just a little bit and spend a little bit of time on your book, which I think is a huge accomplishment. I loved it. I've read it a couple times, and the book is titled "How to Win at Real Estate to Break the Freedom Barrier." Now, there was something in there that I saw that, and you've talked about it before at a couple of your seminars, and you said, I think most of us are lying to ourselves if we think real estate is our passion.
Yes.
The first time I was sitting in that seminar room and I heard you say that, I'm like, yeah, for sure, real estate is my passion. But can you explain? Can you explain a little bit more about that? I think it's brilliant.
Thank you, man. I love this one because 90% of the room always puts up their hand, even 100%. Yes, it's my passion. And so I always talk about passion because, as you can hopefully hear throughout this conversation, what my passion really is helping people break through and all that stuff, right? But when we talk about real estate, bricks and mortar and all this stuff, and it's not about passion that people are passionate about that. They're passionate about what real estate will give them. And they've probably heard that before too, but let's get a little bit deeper with that. Because if I say to them, I'm always challenged because people will say, well, no, you're wrong, because I would still love to do real estate if I had all this money coming in. And so I say to them, okay, well, Gary, well, let me ask you this. You're going to go out and buy a property. All right. And you're going to go through all the rigmarole of getting it and doing all the stuff you have to do to buy it. And you do it. And then you hold it for 5 years and, you do your thing. And the tenants, and you're going to put a tenant in there and the tenant doesn't pay you. because you're doing this because it's your passion and you want to help people, because this is what people will tell me. I do real estate to help people, right? That's my real passion. So if you're helping people, you're going to put tenants in for free. You're not going to get paid,
yeah,
right? And you're going to hold on to this property, and you're going to pay down the mortgage. And then when you sell the property 5 years, you're going to give that money to charity. You're not going to take any money whatsoever. And then people will say, well, hell no. I say, well, you're not helping people. You're still doing real estate because of the money you get from it. If you want to take that money and help people, great, right? That's where you're helping people. If real estate was the thing, you would do it all for free. Right. And so that's where it doesn't make any sense. You're not going to get up every single morning. If you had all the money in the world and you'd never need money again, are you going to get up and go look for properties and all the stuff that you do right now as a real estate investor? Nobody has ever answered the question, yes, I would. Nobody, not one person in the last, 10, 12 years I've been doing this, because they can't logically argue that point. Because if it was their passion, like I just said, well, great. And some people have, like I said, stood up and said, yes, I still would get up and do the real estate, because they're in the mindset of, this is exciting. I like doing spreadsheets and finding deals and all this kind of stuff. I get that. You're excited about it because you're going to make money from it. Right. As soon as I challenge them on that, they're like, no, dude, I'm helping people. And then I give them the example I just gave you. Okay, well, then you're going to go do all that and then let people in for free, and when you sell it, you're not going to make any money? No, that's not right. Well, that debunks the entire thing about helping people. And again, I want to stress that I'm not saying as real estate investors we are not helping people, that we don't want to help people, right? That's part of our job. Part of our job is getting great properties and not being slumlords and all that kind of stuff, right? And we're putting great properties together and treating people like human beings. That's all part of our job. That's right. Not what I'm saying.
And really the passion then is what real estate can do for you, right? And that's where you're now actually going towards your passion. Is that correct, Joey?
Yeah. So it's the result of real estate.
Right.
It's the result that real estate cash flow and selling properties and all that kind of stuff, the money that you make from it, how does that impact your life? Now, if you want to take 50% of that money and give it to charities and help people, all the power to you. You know, Gary, that part of my entire purpose is to get to the point where I could take at least 50, if not more, % of my income and give it away. The reason I want to make more money, the number one reason I want to make more money is to be able to give more of it away.
That's good. That's really good. And I don't think a lot of people can say that. So, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it's not a marketing trick at all. I'm okay with living on, $250,000 a year. Even at this point, I don't even know what I would do with $250,000 a year, right? Anything over and above that, people say, I want to make $1 million a year and all that kind of stuff. Dude, I don't know what I would do with that. The only reason, and this is where my coach came into play and said, well, Joey, you're limiting yourself. If you're saying you only want $250,000, what do you want to do with it? And that's where this passion came. That's where it's like, well, I'd love to give back to cancer societies and animal shelters and you name it, right? I want to be able to go to people, who have autistic children or mentally challenged children who can't afford to go to, Walt Disney World, and walk into their place and give them a $10,000, $15,000 check and walk out without the newspapers being there taking my picture going, look at this hero. I don't need that. It would be great for me just to do that. Right? That's where now my passion is like, okay, I want to make $1 million a year, or I want to make, $100,000 a month. Not because I want the money. It's because I want to give it away. I want to be able to, that's where the passion lies. So he took my limit away of going, no, you only need to make 250,000 so you could be happy, to I want to make $1 million so I could make a whole bunch of other people happy.
Right. Yes, and you have a true passion there where you really want to help other people, and that's why you're doing what you're doing, and why I think you're so good at it as well too, right? It's it suits your characteristics. So
thanks.
And there's another part in the book that I found very interesting as well too, and it said, what are the 2 stages of learning? And this was another kind of aha moment for me as well too.
Yeah, this one, I love getting challenges, as you can say, because, as you can tell, at the beginning of this, we talked about what my superpower is, and it's really about solving problems, right?
Yeah.
So, in solving problems, it's like, I need to have a challenge, right? And so that's where my real thing is. Like, give me a challenge and I'll be able to solve it for you more times than not. So this one I always get challenged on because it's again a mindset. It's like, how do you look at what I'm telling you? And it's funny you're asking me this question because just earlier today, that new coaching client I just talked about, I sent them in some information, or they sent me their task list in what they were doing, and they were part of the task list was, well, I'm going to watch 6 hours worth of video training to go XYZ. And I wrote them back, so this is cool, but it's not really a task. It's not productive time, right? You're learning this information. It's not productive. And they disagreed. And they said, I don't get this. Why is it not productive? It's going to help me do this thing. So there's two stages of learning. And the first stage is that you're aware of something. So you're learning something brand new. You're sitting in a seminar, you're watching a video, whatever it is, and you become aware of the training. You become aware of something that you've never learned or knew before. Like, oh, that's kind of cool. I now know something, right? And I'm productive on it. And you're just aware of it. You haven't learned anything, right? If you learn how to, analyze a property and it's going to cash flow, well, the only time you're going to learn if you're right is when you actually buy the property based on that analyzation, right? To see if you're right. Did the cash flow happen the way I did it? Blah, blah, blah. So the first step is understanding that you are just aware of the knowledge. And the next step is obviously to be using the knowledge. And this is where not only in real estate, space, but every space, every seminar you go out to, no matter what industry, there are tons and tons of people, 80% of those people who are in the aware stage. That's all they're doing. They're going to seminar after seminar, aware of what is needed to do, but they don't go do it. So they haven't learned anything. So in other words, I'll give you a very simple example of this. It's like riding your bike when you were a kid. I could tell you how to ride your bike. I could tell you that you need to pedal faster to balance. But unless you go and do it, you're never going to actually learn what speed you need to pedal, right? You're not going to learn how to avoid a pothole or something so you don't fall off your bike. You could learn it. You could watch somebody on a video do it, go, okay, I get it, but you haven't learned how to do it.
Yeah, and that's where you see a lot of people fall into the analysis paralysis trap. They need to go to one more seminar to learn just one more technique or to learn one more strategy before they actually go out and take that action. And a lot of times, they don't. There's always that same few people in the room that are actually going out and taking action, and the rest you see them, show up month after month, and they're scared.
Yeah, well, that leads into the fear, right?
Yeah.
The fear of failure. So, I talk a lot about failure is the way forward, right? You need to fail in order to understand what's going to work. But most people are terrified of failure. Well, and because, Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, failure is part of success, is it not?
It is. It's the way forward. We wouldn't have light if Thomas Edison didn't fail 10,000 times.
Exactly.
So it's the way forward. But most people are afraid because a lot of times money is attached to it. Well, I did this and I failed and I lost money. Okay, I get it. But dude, you're going to lose money everywhere where you go. Right? It doesn't make any sense to me. That's why passion is the most important thing. Is I'm all in. In the masterminds and coaches that I have, that's a big saying right there. Like, whenever we give excuses, whenever I'm on these calls, I'm in every Tuesday morning is one of them. And whenever I give myself or give an excuse, they just stop me dead cold and say, Joey, are you all in or not? That's it. Right. And I know exactly what they mean, because if I'm not all in, then I'm just BSing myself. I'm just giving excuses of why I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right. Who, and besides your wife and your kids, I know you got a beautiful wife and two beautiful kids, but besides them, who would you say is the most important person in your life? Somebody who's shaped Joey to be the person that he is today?
There's a lot of people. I would say my dad is the first one.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like my clients shape me every day. Like they They allow me to grow. They allow me to do what I'm supposed to do. And just by watching them go through the hardest parts of the journey, and me with the little voice inside my head, I call him Doubting Dan. He's talking to me and he's going, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. And then I see a transformation. That's really important to me. My clients are like family to me. So they shape my world. My coaches, so my dad is number one. Greg Habstrit was my very first coach back in 2011. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today talking to you. It wasn't for him and Karush to force me to step out of all that comfort and to do something outside my comfort zone. I'll never forget, it was Karush really who said to me, when are you going to do something for Joey? When is that going to happen? And he challenged me to do something. And I said to my wife, listen, I could take this $30,000 at that time, it was close to almost buying a property back in 2011. And I could take it and invest it into real estate, or I can invest it in myself. What do you think? And my wife, and she's like, do whatever you think is right. And it was a hard decision because it was like, I got to do something that I've never done before. And it took me a day to figure that out. And I called them back and said, I'm in. And it was the scariest thing I ever did. But if it wasn't for them, I would not have met all of the great gurus and people in my life that are still in my life right now who challenge me to the core. I really don't know where I would be, Gary, if it wasn't for Karush and Greg.
Right. And so it really circles back again to the beginning. What this call's about is, the mindset, number one, but number two is the coaching, and having somebody there in your corner to coach you, to show that yes, you're on the right track, or no, you're not, and here's what you're doing wrong, and here's how you continue to move forward. And I remember there was one coach that you had as well too. I think it was Brendan Burchard.
Yeah.
And there was something that he had taught. I think it was him that he taught, but it was the sticky notes. Do you remember that?
Oh, that was Eben. Okay, so that was Eben Pagan.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, because I thought that was an important one, and I always share that with some of the beginning investors that I work with, especially when they're struggling, how the sticky notes help me and how it helped my coach and his coach.
Yeah, yeah, because I think that when we look at people who are more successful than us, the more success that they have, I've found the less, the simpler their lives are, the less things they do. And we always think it's the other way around. That's why sacrifice is that blockage in people's minds that I'm trying to get away from, going that you don't have to hustle harder, right? You don't have to do this other kind of stuff, right? Focus on the one thing. The book is out there, the one thing. And there's a reason for that. But we just deviate from it. And so when Eben was talking to us, and I was talking to him about productivity at the time, because that was one of the biggest things I wanted to deal with, was how do I get all this stuff done? How do I get these new habits into my life? Because he was talking a lot about changing our habits, right? Which we all need to do. We all got bad habits that we need to replace. And so I said, well, listen, and I was one of those guys that went through his training. And I said, well, I'm learning all this stuff. And he's one of the ones that brought it up. You're just aware of it. You're not doing it, right? And so I said, well, okay, what do you do? Like, how do you actually change your habits? And he said, sticky notes. And and these are people who are making millions, tens of millions of dollars. Okay. And I'm sitting there going, wait a second. You have all this productivity training that you're giving all these methods and strategies and stuff that are fantastic. So I was basically challenging him on those courses. And I go, this ain't working. I went through all this stuff. It ain't working. So then he said, well, yeah, maybe it doesn't work. And here's how I do it. So what he did is, when he wanted to change a habit, he would put a sticky note where he needed to see it in order to change the habit. And I'll give you a very simple example. He was talking about, drinking water every day. Like, that's part of his routine now, right? And as a habit, we would get up, and I would be the same, get up and have a coffee and blah, 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 right? And so what he would do is he'd put a piece of, a sticky note that said drink water, and he would put it on his mirror. So if he got up and went to brush his teeth first, he knew that he had to drink water first. And then, oh yeah, that's right. So he would go downstairs and And the first thing you go into the kitchen to get the water, well, there's the coffee pot. Have a coffee first. And on the coffee pot, what do you think is there? Another sticky note. It says drink water. So he would retrain his natural, his natural tendencies to go do what was already in his life as a habit, to go do something different. So as soon as that became a habit where he wasn't being re-diverted from going to the coffee pot and seeing that note, as soon as that was not happening anymore, now he's instilled a new habit, which is get up in the morning, drink my water first. And he would put water, on his nightstand. And so I just adopted some of those things too. I use sticky notes sometimes in my life, but I have other methods. So that was just one cool way of actually looking at a multi-millionaire person going, well, you've got to have some super magical power of how you change habits. Like, what is it?
Yeah.
And so, right.
And I think the thing with that, because I know a few people have asked me about, coaching and should I do it, or, is it a waste of money? And the one thing that I always say that, if you get a coach and you get a good coach, and again, just even the story that you shared with us, there isn't really anything that I think that you come across that's mind blowing, but it's a lot of really good nuggets of information that you can now use as, a part of your everyday life. And
yeah.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I think that when a person gets to a point where they're asking, is a coach going to help me? Like, I can tell right away who's the person I can help just by speaking to them, right? If they're in the learning phase, in the I want to be aware phase, I can't help them. Like, if they want to learn productivity, hacks and all this other kind of stuff, you need to go read a few more books, right? It's not the fact, you just nailed it on the head, Gary. It's the fact that we already know what to do. We already know. There's nothing that I do that is magical on giving you something that you've never heard before. There are a few things, hey, I just learned this thing, right? But on the surface, really, 95% of it you already know.
Yep.
My job is to put it in front of you and say, are you doing this on a daily basis? And the answers are no. And my job is to go, well, why not? And so to get to the surface of why you're avoiding doing the things that you know you should be doing, right? If you are 300 pounds overweight and you know you should be on the treadmill, but you don't get up and go on the treadmill, why not? I don't need to tell you need to lose weight. I don't need to tell you you're going to die of a heart attack.
You know what it is? It's accountability. That's the big thing, Joey, because I know every Monday morning we had to get our shit into you by 10 a.m. in the morning, and me and Dar look at each other and we're like, oh my God, but we always got it in.
Right.
We always got it in, and we always made sure that it was on time. Sometimes like it was a minute after 10 a.m. and you'd lose your mind on us, but
yeah, there'd be an email going out, where the hell's the stuff, right?
Yeah. Like literally like a minute after. Even for our phone calls, you'd lose your mind.
Yeah, because you're accountable to me. Like, you're violating my time that I've put aside, right? And so you're fitting into my schedule, and I'm taking time out to engage with you, and you're disengaging by going, I'll just come 5 or 6 minutes late, giving excuses. I get it, things happen, right? But that's why you lose it. And I learned that after with my coaches, because I was the worst of being late. 15, 20 minutes late. He'll get it. They'll get it. And no, they didn't get it. It's like, dude, like, I've put this time aside for you and it's over. It's gone. You've just wasted that. And so, there was one thing I just lost my train of thought I was going to bring up there that was important, but, yeah, the accountability is really important. Oh, here's what it was. It was the fact that if we end this call right now, the one thing you take away from it would be that we always put time into what we believe is important, period. So if you sit there and give yourself an excuse and go, well, I didn't do this because blah, 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 the bottom line is you just did not think that other thing was as important as you sitting on the couch eating chips, and you should be on the treadmill, period. Right. And when you realize that, when you look at the mirror and you do that moment in the mirror thing going, the reason I'm fat is because I ain't working out and I like chips better. Like, when you admit that stuff, that's when the transformation begins to happen, right? And we give ourselves excuses every day, Gary. And I'm included. I'm not pointing any fingers here. I give myself excuses every day. But I've identified the excuses, and I call them the Doubting Dan excuses.
Right. And sometimes, frustration and anger can be good.
Yep.
Because that can then completely change your whole entire life. I know it did for me. When I woke up one day and I was like, I am not doing this anymore.
Yep.
And that was complete frustration. Like, I just can't do it anymore. I can't continue. You know what it was? I remember one time too, when I was at work, and we were talking about, man, I can't wait to retire. And they were like, we're going to wish away the next 25 years of our life because we can't wait to get to 65.
Right.
And that's when you really got to take a look at, what are you doing with your life?
It's funny because just on that point, 1 second, I want to really emphasize the fact that the moment of change, like Antonio Robbins talks about this a lot of times, and the moment of change happens in a minute. In a second, it happens, but it may take you a lifetime to get to that minute.
Right.
And so we need to realize that, because I have a lot of clients who are, well, not a lot, but many clients who have lost a lot of weight. Right. And I would never know. And we get to and when I'm talking about what's a passion for you or what's real for you and all this kind of stuff. And then I said to them, okay, well, what was the point that you decided it was time to lose, 300 pounds? And they always tell me it was when I walked in front of the mirror and saw myself that one day, and I saw the reflection or got out of the shower or whatever, saw myself naked. Mm-hmm. And it was over. I just did not want to look like that anymore. So it was that moment, but they knew up to that point that they were still overweight and all that kind of other stuff, that they need to lose weight or whatever it was, right? But it was that one moment they looked in the mirror and said, And I'm not saying it's always going to happen for all of us that we look in the mirror and see ourselves, holy crap, right? But that's why I call it the moment in the mirror, because it's all different for all of us, what that moment looks like and what it's about.
Now, what about you, Joey? What are your struggles been, or what are your frustrations? Like, what gets, where Joey has a bad week? What are those things?
Okay, so here's the biggest thing for me. One of the biggest things is that I'm an 80%er. Like, I call myself an 80%er. Yeah. So I'm a really good starter. I can start something. I have a really big superpower of not needing to know the information and just jumping and starting it and going all in. Okay. Then I get to 80% of it. Like, I'm there, I'm working strategically. I get there and I'm like, okay, dude, Joey, this is good enough, man. Like, and cause I'm ADD. So I'm like, there's so many other things I want to do. Right. And so I bounce. So I put this on hold and I give myself the excuse of, well, you shouldn't be always in this thing. You need some time to breathe. Let that thing breathe a little bit so you can come back to it and readjust it. Cause I've been full in, right? 80%. Spend my week doing this thing. And then I never get back to it. So I have a lot of unfinished projects, and that's one of my biggest struggles. And the other biggest struggle, and we talked about this again with my group, and I said, I can teach somebody. It's like the shoemaker, or it's like whatever, the doctor that can diagnose somebody else, but they can't diagnose themselves and all this other kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Where I can look at somebody's life and I can say, okay, well, here's the problem. These are the steps that you need to take to fix this. Okay. And so when I'm creating training programs or whatever that looks like, which I do a lot of, my biggest problem is, well, where do I start teaching and where do I stop teaching? Okay. And I understand the process. I understand we'll start with point A and end with point B. And I'm like, I get that, because my coaches tell me all the time, right, Joey, you know the information. And I say, yeah, but, and there's that, yeah, but there's that doubting Dan coming in going, well, I'm not sure. Where's the problem? That I need to start with people. And where do I need to end? Because I always feel as though I need another piece of information, right? So I told you at the beginning, one of my biggest super strengths is that I'm a problem solver. So when Gary comes to me and you give me a problem, I can tell you, let's take 3 steps back and go here. Did you do these things? And then we move, right? But if you told me, okay, Joey, can you just tell me how to be more productive? I'm like, okay, dude, well, what's the problem? I don't know what the problem is. So my biggest thing is, where do I start people? And that's why I think I'm a really good coach, and I have powers that a lot of other coaches don't, because and I'm not saying I'm better. It's just because it's a different approach, because most coaching programs, they start at module 1. Okay, did you do this? And let's go through this. And sometimes those people don't need that. They need to jump to module 3 or step 3 or whatever, right? And that's where my biggest challenge is and my biggest strength is. It's my kryptonite. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. right? Because I've seen you, and again, like even the coaching that we've had from you and the people that were in the group at that time when me and Darlene were in it, they were at different levels, and you were able to bring it up or to bring it down if you needed to based on who you were talking to, right?
Right.
So no, 100% I understand where you're coming from and the skill sets that you have.
So that's the biggest thing is the product is really trying to get everything done that I have in my mind because I'm ADD, right? And there's so many things I could do. So my biggest thing is like everybody else. It's what's the one thing that I need to be doing today?
Mm-hmm. Now, what are the books that you're currently reading, Joey? Or podcasts that you're listening to that you can share with us?
I don't do a lot of podcasting as I should, only because I read a book a week. Which,
wow.
So, yeah, and I see that reaction that you just gave was the reaction I gave Brendan back in 2013 or 14, whatever it was, and I was working with him, and he said that on stage. I'm like, are you crazy? A book a week? Like, that's insane, okay? And today I look at it and I say to people, book a week, and they're like, holy crap, I can't even read a book a year. I'm just like, so that's what I do. Like 25% of my day is absorbing information, is reading. And again, it's just the awareness part of it. I need to put it into action.
And when are you doing it, Joey? Because I think that's where, so again, I say wow, and I'm sure a lot of other people that are listening that don't do it are probably saying wow. But so when do you find that time to do it? For Joey, is it during the day? Is it first thing in the morning? Is it in the evening?
Yeah, so it's usually first in the morning. Again, this is going to be different for everybody. So if we want to talk about books, one of the books that will help you determine the answer to this is called The Power of When. And The Power of When, I gave you guys remember that. We did the little exercise, right, of what type of a chronotype you are and when is the best time to do things. That book will help everybody on this call. Just go buy the book. It's kind of a Bible. You don't have to read the entire thing. It's like it's got a section. Like, okay, this is really going to help me on when should I argue with somebody? When is the best time to negotiate? When is the best time to read? And all this other kind of stuff. So you'll find your flow zone. And my flow zone is in the morning. So I figure that the best time that we have to absorb is in the morning because most of us are looking at our phones and taking on all this other information when we should be taking information that's going to help us. So for me, that's what it is. And I want to get back to the reading a book a week just for a second to prove to everybody that you could do this too. Okay. So an average book, let's say it's 250 pages. Okay. We would all agree that that's what an average book is. And if you did a test and read for one day and just counted the amount of pages that you read, I would guesstimate that if you took an hour a day to do this, you would probably be able to read 50 pages. And even if you're a slow reader and you did 2 hours a day, okay, one in the morning, one at night maybe, but not before bed, because if you're going into bed, what you're doing, you're training your brain to go, hey, reading is supposed to put me to sleep. So you don't want to do that. So you want to be in a zone where you really want to read, not that you have to read. That's the key. Okay. So if you agree to that and you do 2 hours a day and you read 50 pages, guess how many you're reading books a week, right? 50 times 5 is what? 250, correct? If my math is right?
Yeah.
That's a week. And that's all it is. And I could guarantee you that, 80% of the people on this call can read 50 pages in 1 hour if you're not distracted. If you don't have your phone on and all this other kind of stuff, you could probably read close to 50 pages a day.
Right. And again, it goes, back to breaking things down in small chunks. And if you can't do an hour, do half an hour, whatever it is, but just get it in.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm giving you 5 days. So imagine that you had 7 days to get in those extra pages here and there or whatever that looks like. And once you begin reading and it becomes a process for you, you read faster, right? You just get into the habit of knowing how to read faster. It's just practice. So a book a week, when you break it down like that, is really not that hard. I'm not talking about reading The War and Peace. I'm talking about, okay, like a regular book.
Yeah. And there's a book out there called How to Read a Book, right?
Exactly right.
And they'll teach you how to read a book.
Exactly right.
Right. Listen, Joey, we're getting pretty close to the end here, but there's a couple more questions I wanted to ask before we wrap it up. Yep. There was something that Darlene and I had learned from you, which I thought was a brilliant concept, and it was called the 12-week goals. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? I thought it was really good.
Yeah, so the 12-week goals, it's going to be hard to explain really, really quickly, but what it does is the 12-week goals is a compression technique. And so most of us write goals like 12-month goals, 1-year goals. And so what I found is working over all this time with people is that even a year from now, like if we're doing 12-month goals, it's still too far out to really have some sort of impact on us to make us actually want to do it because it's so far out. Right? We've got 12 months to do it or 6 months left to do it. And so what I do is I compress it and I say, okay, here's the big goal. And what are the sub goals that are going to help this big goal, right? Let's say it's making $1 million a year, whatever, right? There's other sub goals that'll happen. And so what we do is we take the sub goal, let's say there's 4 of those sub goals, and we compress it. We say, okay, well, in the next 90 days, we're only going to focus on this one sub goal of making $1 million. Okay? Whatever that may be. Just come up with it in your own mind. And so it's compressed. And then within that one sub goal, there are multiple tasks that need to happen for you to get that sub goal. And that's where the problem lies, because what I just broke down for you is there's multiple tasks in all of those 4 goals to get to the big goal over the year, and we get confused. We're like, okay, well, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to go do that, right? Whereas if you choose the one thing that you need to get done in the next 90 days that will actually move you towards the bigger goal, and you focus only on that for the next 12 weeks, you will see how fast you will be moving toward your bigger goal. And the compression technique is basically now we've got only 12 weeks, and the weeks turn into, well, a week is worth now a month, right? So if you waste a week's time and just diddling and dallying and doing nothing, you've just wasted a month, right? So if you waste a day, that you're wasting a week. So each thing begins to transform. So the 12 weeks transforms into, this is worth 1 year worth of time. So a month, right? The 3 months is worth a year's time.
Yeah. No,
and so it's compressed.
Yeah. No, it was really good. And we got so much done by using that technique. Like it literally, catapulted what we were trying to get to so much faster. It really did.
It's very hard to understand the concept, like especially over a little podcast like this. And it took you guys a couple of weeks to actually, what's going on here? Like, what are we doing? Because it's such a new technique of compression time, right? Where nothing else gets in there. And we naturally want to add more goals. Oh, I want to do this and I want to do this. No, you've got 4 major things to do. We're eliminating the other 3 that are not the most important thing right now. We need to go do this one thing. And what does it do, Gary? It forces you to see where you need to make adjustments to get to that one goal.
Right. Because you get caught up, and I don't mean to, do this, and sometimes we still do, but you get caught up in like, okay, it's the beginning of the year, let's write down everything that we want to accomplish for the whole entire year. And then you're like, okay, well, hold on, we got to fill this board out. We still need 6 more things to stick in here, right?
Yeah.
And so I understand it, but really what this does is like, okay, hold on a second, we don't have to fill up this board with all these goals. These are the 3 or 2 maybe important things that we really want to accomplish, and let's just focus on that and let's get this done, because that's going to get us to where we really want to get to, and whatever that major goal is that you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it really frustrates me because I know I'm like that. I'm distracted. We all are. It frustrates me more when I see my coaching clients distracted and they give me excuses of why they're not getting what they really want, because we go through, the mastermind is a day-long thing and it's intense. It's 10, 12 hours. And out of that, they're motivated. But then a couple of weeks later, like, well, I did this, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. And then they break down or they go off on tangents, right? And so I say, if all you did was walk out of that and I knighted you that you could only do this thing, I guarantee you that you'll be further ahead 90 days from now, right? But we don't stick to it. And so it's discipline. Like anything that has to come down to coaching, no matter if you gel with your coach or not or whatever, it's all about you. You have to be disciplined to go through everything. If you're not disciplined enough, again, we do what we think is important. Right? If we hire a coach, hey, we're doing something that's great, all the power to you, but then it comes back to you. Are you disciplined enough to listen to what the coach is doing, paying the dude, on months where you didn't get anything, no results, and still staying with the coach? Like that's discipline.
Yeah.
Because you're right. You're just adding. You're going, oh, well, that didn't work. The coach, it didn't work. I didn't get what I wanted. Well, maybe because throughout that month you didn't listen to what the coach was telling you to do.
Right. You know, there's a great saying by Jim Rohn who said that discipline weighs ounces and regret weighs tons.
Right on.
You know, and it really does come down to discipline.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's
so
all
right. Listen, Joey, great chatting with you. Before we wrap it up, what's the one last piece of advice that you can leave us with? Like the best piece of advice. I said, okay, that's it. This is the best podcast I've ever listened to in my whole entire life. Thank you so much, Joey Ragona.
I think that the best advice is this, is that you have to understand that you are trading your life every single day for something. If you're not getting what you want, trading it for something that you don't want. And if you don't step into believing and having the confidence in yourself and the fact that you can get through challenges and failures that will happen, you are trading your life every day, a piece of it away, for something that you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
you have to have that belief. There's nothing I can tell you that's going to change the belief except yourself, except believing in that other people have done it. I'm going to be able to do it. And confidence is one of my biggest, one of my biggest foundational pieces of my company. I try to give everybody the confidence that they need. And so if you gain the confidence in yourself, it will overtake every other doubting Dan little voice in your head that's telling you you can't do something for whatever reason. And just for example, if you're driving to work, hating to go to work every day, and you're not doing anything to change that, then you are actively saying, I'm trading my life for something I hate.
Wow. Yeah, I can't agree with you more with that. That is a great piece of advice, because so many people do get caught up in that, and they get comfortable or complacent in what it is that they're doing. And they go into work and everybody else is, sometimes in that same boat, or they're complaining as well too. Is like, well, you get that, misery enjoys company, right?
Right. And so the real saying is, I'm stealing it from John Assaraf, who told me, it's what are you willing to trade your life for?
Right.
Right. And that's really the piece of advice that changed my life. And I want to share it with everybody else. So really, when you look at it, what are you trading your life for? And if you're trading it for your fears taking over your life every day, going, should I buy that piece of property or not? What if it fails? What if I don't get the cash flow or the tenants? You're trading your life for fear. You're willing to trade it for fear and not for the possible outcome of you buying a piece of property that makes you money, that gives you the freedom in the future.
Right. And you know what? And just to clarify too, because sometimes I think it seems like I'm always bashing people that have 9-to-5 jobs, and you know what? And I'm not.
No.
There's lots of people that love their 9-to-5 job, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. It's just don't be doing something that you don't enjoy doing.
Yeah, that's right. There's far and few between that I do meet who really love their jobs. I get it. Most people I meet want to get out of their jobs, and if they could say, well, what would you do right now for me to get what I want? The answer really simply would be quit your job. But I understand that they can't quit tomorrow. Okay. But what I am saying to them is what you're actively doing is you're not doing something every day to move you out of the job 6 months from now. You haven't made a choice to say in 6 months, I'm out, or 12 months, I'm out. You're just going around, bouncing around, looking for something to land in your lap to give you the magic that says, hey, this is great. Now I can do this. No, you need to make a choice, which is what I'm saying. So if you don't make the choice of, like, in 6 months, no matter what, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to use my savings to, whatever. You're choosing every day to go to a job that you hate. That's all I'm trying to say, regardless of the people who love their job. So let's take them out of the picture. So it's actually deciding, no, today's the end. So tomorrow I start moving toward getting out of my job 6 months from now. Right. That's a powerful decision rather than saying, yeah, I want to leave my job. Dude, that tells me nothing.
Right. Yeah, you got to have that game plan. Right.
Right.
For sure. And that's the hard part. A lot of people just don't know what they really want to do with their lives. And that is where, and this is how we'll finish it. And that's how a coach like Joe Ragona can help you. It's done.
Thank you,
finished,
brother.
Right?
Exactly. Right.
So listen, Joey, people want to get a hold of you, how can they find you, or how can they get in contact with you?
There's two ways. You can just go to my website. I have two websites. The strategicbusinessacademy.com is my more active website now because it's where the coaching and everything is. So again, strategicbusinessacademy.com. Go there. There's a couple of links to where you could set up a free consultation with me. It's not one of those bait and switch things where I'm trying to sell you coaching. It's really about me giving you a 30-minute, rundown of what I'm looking at your life and help you with a blueprint. And then you walk away from that deciding whether to either hire me, hire somebody else, or go do it on your own. But you're going to walk away with a game plan, with a blueprint, because that's really what it's about. Like, a real strategy call is not a sales pitch. It's more of like, here's what you need to go do. And then your decision is like, well, do I jive with Joey, or is there somebody else I want to go get, or go do it on your own? Right.
And was there another website you said?
Oh yeah, that's right. See, I already forgot. So engagedinvestor.com. Engagedinvestor.com. That's the more real estate specific side. You can probably find a free coaching thing there too.
All right, perfect. Joey, listen, thank you very much for your time. I know you're very busy, and it means a lot to me to sit down and do this podcast with you. You've done a lot for me, for my wife, my kids, the family. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, man. I take time out anytime to talk to you, brother. And I really appreciate the platform that you're giving people, the help that you're doing for people. You've changed so many, many lives. And I don't know if I've told you this before, but because of that, I'm kind of helping other people change their life too through what you're doing. I know it kind of sounds, woo-woo, or, maybe a little bit too whatever, right? But it's the truth. Like, whoever you touch and help, I feel as though I'm a part of that. And I appreciate that, and I'll never forget that, because it's the channels that I'm able to do more. And I remember back the first time that back in 2011 was one of the things that I promised Greg and the crew was that we were going to help 1 million people through the people that we help, and you're helping me achieve that.
Well, you're welcome, Joey, and also thank you. So
you're welcome.
All right. So listen, great podcast. And you enjoy the rest of your day, Joey, and we'll talk soon.
Will do. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all so much for joining this month's podcast. I hope you guys really enjoyed the content. Don't forget to check out smarthomechoice.ca to learn more about real estate investing and how we can help.